Welcome everyone, my name is Alfredo Nani and I will be talking about applied behavior analysis. I would like to highlight the basic principles of applied behavior analysis and also identify the benefits of the ABA research method. I will go through a little bit of history, what applied behavior analysis is, a case study, and finally some conclusions. Behavior is anything a person does that can be observed and measured. It is interesting it says measure because if we can measure it, we can change it. Behavior has been something really appealing to people throughout history, and we have here some of the early thinkers. We have Aristotle in 325 BC, and he was interested in why animals and humans behaved the way they did. It was not until the 17th century that René Descartes tried to connect behavior and also say it was a voluntary behavior and that it was due to the actions of soul and mind, and that it was not because of supernatural causes. Years later, the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov carried some experiments with dogs. He noticed that while the introduction of food or acid into the mouth resulted in a flow of saliva. These reactions, he called them conditional reflexes because they depended, they were conditional. It was until the 1920s that Watson proposed what behaviorism is. But it was focused on working with animals. Years later, Skinner took approach forward conceptually and methodological and came with the term applied behavior analysis. This was an evolution from the term behavior modification, and it was very popularized in the 1960s. The idea behind this research method is that behavior is plastic. We can change it. We can make things better. So as said before, behavior analysis attempts to improve the human condition. We have to consider that behavior is a product of circumstances and events, so we can control some of them. And also, it's a data-driven decision process. We have to be able to assess, we have to be able to control, to make changes. Applied behavior analysis is an area of behavior analysis. And the goal here is to solve practical and socially significant problems. And we can do this through two different focuses. We can increase appropriate behavior and skills, or we can reduce problematic behaviors. The goal is the same. We want to improve the quality of life of individuals. So things go as follow. We have a biological, pharmacological, experiential factors. Then we have behavior, human or non-human. And then we have adaptive behavior, so we can change things. We change things through interventions. We change some variables, we control things, and then we assess again. This area of research has proven to be useful in behaviors such as drug taking, healthy eating, workplace safety, education, and especially treatment of persuasive development disabilities, for example, autism. So the goal here is figuring out why people behave the way they do. And we have different techniques. ABA techniques can be classified in many different. I'm going to talk of two different. The positive reinforcement to motivate the subject immediately. So we want to give something to the subject. So we are giving him an extrinsic reinforcement. Once we eliminate this reinforcement, we hope he or she will get an intrinsic reinforcement. And also, we want to train for generalization. We want people or subjects to learn skills that they can use in any situation. And it goes like this. We want to select a population or end behavior. We want to establish a baseline data. And then we will apply an intervention. We assess after the intervention, and finally, we get the results. It is very important to define a baseline. If we don't do that, we will not know if what we did was positive or negative. In this figure, you can see the episode of sleeping in class under baseline conditions and DR contingencies. So on the y-axis, we can see the episodes of sleeping, and we have a baseline. Then we can see that during the treatment, the number of episodes lower, and that's what we want to do. So we have quantitative data. Other things we can use when we're working with the ABA research method are operational definitions. So we may want to assess frequency, and this is the number of times that behavior occurs. So for example, if we have kids that are hitting their heads with their hands, we want to count the number of times they do this. Another operational definition, it's rate. And this is really important because it helps us to have consistency. And this is because we count the number of behaviors, but we use time. So it will not be the same to say that this behavior happened 2 times during 2 hours, or it happened 4 times during 4 hours. If we only count the number of frequencies, we may think the behavior is increasing, but if we use rate, we can see that it's happening once every hour. The next one is duration. We have to establish the time the episode lasts. So it's very important to define what is the beginning of an episode or an event and what is the end. How do you define the end of this episode? We have latency. This is the time between the instruction you gave and the action. How long did it take to the subject to get the information and do something? And finally, we have permanent product, the result of behavior you don't need to see. So for example, one kid is breaking toys. When you get home, you see 3 broken toys. That's the permanent product. These are some of the operational definitions we can use and things we want to assess using ABA. Now, I'll talk about the case study. And this case study was alternative seating for young children with autistic spectrum disorder, effects on classroom behavior. And you will see here that we'll go through all the steps to have a research in ABA. So we have to define what is the purpose of the study. And we want to examine the use of therapy balls for seating as an intervention for children with autistic spectrum disorder. Now we know our population and we know what is the behavior we want to change. So we make research questions. What effect does using therapy balls as chairs have in seating behavior? What are the effects of sitting on therapy balls on engagement? So we have two things we want to assess. Next, we established the method. And here it was on preschool children with ASD, who attended public schools located in a university campus. And the participants were reported to have difficulties in sitting behavior and also maintaining engagement to task. So after we have all that, we have to design the intervention. So the intervention was implemented in sitting individualized for each participant. Phase A, nothing was altered and data were collected on sitting behavior and engagement. Phase B included the introduction to therapy balls for classroom sittings. So phase A had no changes. It was a normal day. And phase B, it was the intervention. So we want to assess behavior and engagement in phase A and then compare it to phase B. Then we have data collection. So we were collecting data for two different scenarios. And the results. Participants show improvement in classroom behavior during the use of therapy balls for classroom sitting. Also, engagement was observed to increase during the sessions. So, from my personal point of view, I found that applied behavior analysis is very interesting and it's also very applicable to my daily job. I can see this applicable to what I do on campus because we want to change certain behaviors. So we need to incentivize people to change them. And I do believe this method is relevant for sustainability education because only having data may not be enough to make personal changes. We need to comprehend science and get an incentive to change patterns. Reinforcements do not necessarily need to be a physical thing. So I think there's a lot we can do. I totally see trying to apply this on everything I do. Here are some reference and thank you for watching. Hope everything was clear and I apologize for any grammatical and language issues. Thank you so much. Have a great day.